Okay. In 1964, I graduated from high school, and Lynn had finished her third year of college. And so we worked all summer until the 4th of October. We flew from New York to Luxembourg. And in order to get to New York, we took a Trailways bus from Portland to New York, 3.5 days. We had a 24-hour layover in Salina, Kansas to meet Lynn's future in-laws. And we arrived in Luxembourg, and we hitchhiked from Luxembourg to Wolfsburg, Germany, where we picked up our brand new 1965 Volkswagen Bug and drove all over Europe. So,
Yeah, I thought a little bit of background. Why did we do this? And both of us had applied for and been rejected by the AFS program, American Field Service Program, to be exchange students in Europe. And so we had a burning desire to get over there, and decided that we would do it. Our folks had a small insurance policy that matured on for both of us. I guess was probably something from Metropolitan Life to fund a college education or something. And like Jan said, we worked and saved our money and had a fund and took off. I recently found a copy of the check that we took to Gladstone Volkswagen to pay for this car, and it was like, what, $1,300?
Yeah.
For a brand new Volkswagen. And so, you know, we had wheels we could get, and which meant that we could get off the beaten track of a little bit in our travels. So we weren't always, you know, on where the train would take you.
Mm-hmm. And the car, it was great having the car. On the other hand, we hitchhiked for a few days when we first got there before we had the car, and we hitchhiked for the last 2 weeks. We shipped the car home from Hamburg,
Mm-hmm.
and then we hitchhiked from Hamburg and across Belgium to Ostend, where we got the ferry to Dover, and then we hitchhiked in Great Britain. And it makes it's a different kind of experience when you're hitchhiking. In Denmark, we had a man pick us up and take us home for the night. We had somebody else buy us a meal one time. Anyway, people were very nice about picking up a couple. But on the other, as Lynn was saying, the fact that we had a car meant that we could do a lot of things that would have been out of reach for a hitchhiker. Side trips from Madrid into the mountains, and we went to Delphi in Greece, and we went to Sounion in Greece, places that would have been difficult otherwise to get to. And we had youth hostel cards, and we stayed in youth hostels every night, almost every night. I think that, as I recall, we slept in the car 10 nights, which was not fun. And we had a hotel 3 or 4 times. And I remember that our budget for food and lodging was $4 a day for the 2 of us. So that was about 35 cents a night for the hostel and about $1 a day to eat. That did not include gas, which was probably as expensive as food.
One of the things that I like to tell about our initial part of our trip, really, this was before there was a big wave of young people going to Europe with a backpack. And I mean, we really didn't know anybody that had done that. And so I thought that what you did when you went to Europe was you shipped a trunk. And so it just cracks me up. So we shipped a trunk to Le Havre, and after we got the car and in Germany and made our way into France, and I could hardly wait to get into France because I'd been taking French all through 4 years of high school and some in college anyway, so I was just dying to get to France. But we had to get over to Le Havre and pick up our trunk. And I know that the young guys or old guys or whatever they were, guys that worked at the dock, were very amused by us innocent two Americans picking up this trunk. And what were we going to do with it? The trunk. Well, they told us that they would just set it aside and we could come back and get it later on. And we took all the drawers out of the trunk and stacked them up in the back seat of the Volkswagen. Oh God. I mean, we had guys riding with us. Sorry, riding with us sometimes with those. Oh dear, I don't know if I can tell these stories. It just amuses me so much. These poor guys with these drawers in between them, and one of the things about sleeping in the car, I didn't know it was as many as 10 nights, but a really memorable night was in Rome, and we found the youth hostel, and it was, like 9 p.m., 2 minutes to 9 p.m., and they were going to lock the door. And they said, don't leave anything in your car, it'll be stolen. And on the other hand, we're locking the door and there's no time to shift these boxes, these drawers and all this stuff into the youth hostel. So we had a little conference, and Jan at 6 feet and me at 5'3", I decided, okay, well, I'll sleep in the car, which I did. I remember I even put pajamas on out there. And in the middle of the night, a flashlight gets shown into the back seat. The thieves were checking out the cars, and I just reached up and beat on the window and said, "Basta!" And they laughed, and then they just moved on down and robbed another car. Anyway, I don't know. That was one of our youth hostel sleeping in the car experiences. So after we picked up the car, then what, Jan?
Well, then we drove down through Germany. We went to Nuremberg and Munich, and then we turned west and went to Paris. And Paris was great. We had a little hotel on the West Bank, and
Hotel Dieppe.
Yeah, and we would walk to American Express every day to pick up our across the Pont Neuf and to pick up our mail at the American Express, and I think one thing that really should be mentioned is that we were really full-time tourists. We were at it 10, 12 hours every day, and during those days, almost all the museums were free, and because, as Lynn said before, this was before the great rush of Americans going to Europe, and also because it was winter, there were very few people about. So I remember being in the Louvre and standing in front of the Mona Lisa for quite some time, and there was nobody around. Mm-hmm. And now you hear about people peering over each other's shoulders to get a glimpse.
There's a fence,
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
at that time you could walk right up to the painting. So that was certainly. I mean, for both of us, it was a real education because we really did work at it. We did, every time we got to a new place, we'd get the tourist information, find out what there was to see, and plot our time, and away we go.
And my brother was the kind that read every placard, So we spent time in the museums. We didn't just fly through.
Yeah. And I think, now it's kind of hard to project yourself back and realize just how little we knew about what we were going to do. And we learned a tremendous amount during that time about Western art and history, and read history of places as we went along. But probably more than anything else is with the art museums, which were a great revelation and a great pleasure.
We went in Paris, we went to Jeu de Paume, which doesn't exist anymore. And I remember being in there. It was a small Impressionist, I think it was an Impressionist collection at Jeu de Paume. And we noticed two other American couples encountering each other and getting into a conversation. And I think they were both Oregonians. And we just sat there and didn't say anything. We didn't want to join those other Yanks, but and then the Rodin we wanted to go see the Rodin collection, and we were shocked. And you know, this is 64, so the war is not that much in the past. And Rodin sculptures were in this dusty, you know, funky old workshop. I mean, we couldn't really believe it. And now when you go there, it's beautiful and everything's been redone. There's a beautiful, you know, sculpture garden. But then it was just really like he just took off his smock and left, and it didn't seem highly respected or anything.
Well, another thing that was interesting about the Rodin Museum was that they had a lot of his plaster casts, which was actually what the artist made to make a mold to do the bronzes, and so that was interesting. I'd never really seen them, and so the Thinker and other famous statues, they were the original plaster casts of them. And as Lynn said, the Jeu de Paume, I think the story was that the Impressionists were not really accepted in their own time, and so their work was not admitted into the Louvre. And so they had a separate museum
I remember that.
They had a separate museum for, and it was all the names that you know: Gauguin, Van Gogh, Monet, Manet, Pissarro,
Cézanne, you know.
Cézanne, yeah,
Probably Picasso.
yeah. Well, there's a thousand memories that we have. Let's see. Well, I remember we stayed in Madrid for 6 weeks. We'd really been traveling hard for 2 months, and we got to Madrid and wanted to settle down, and Madrid was a cheap place to stay at that time, and a wonderful city. The Prado Museum, and it can't be beat in Madrid, and we took side trips from there. But when we left just after New Year's.
Let's not leave yet.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so for one thing, we realized that our money was going faster than we wanted it to, and we wanted to stay till spring. So the cheapest place, like as Jan said, was Spain, and we thought it was going to be warm. It snowed. It wasn't warm, but we found a pension, Pension Jose Garcia, and the address was Chinchilla Cuatro. And so we had a room there in this Spanish pension, and I was just trying to think of the day. I know we took dinner, and we were shocked to find that dinner was served at 10 p.m. And a lot of olive oil, and that was my first experience of olive oil, and the pungent smell of everything being cooked in olive oil. But did we take breakfast?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we had breakfast there. I don't know about the midday meal, but I think
we didn't do the midday meal.
Yeah.
I know for that for sure. And there were some other Americans there, 4 guys or 3 guys, and we would sit with them at dinner. And honestly, I mean, we could think of some of the stories but we just laughed ourselves silly with those guys. And you know, we were kind of raucous with all these other staid Spanish and Cuban. There were Cubans there that were hanging out trying to get a visa to America, I think.
Yeah.
It was after the Cuban Revolution. I learned to knit. One of the Cuban women taught me to knit. Uno derecho, uno revés. Knit one, one to the left, one to the right. But anyway, and I made Jan a sweater.
Oh, that's right.
An entire sweater.
There were also free concerts. We took advantage of. It was amazing. You'd have some small, auditorium someplace, and a chamber orchestra would be playing something, and it was free. And we did that, I don't know, 4 or 5 times in Madrid. And also, I mean, Lynn talked about making money. She did some babysitting, and I think you got like 6 pesetas an hour, like 10 cents an hour. And we also taught English conversation to a very nice Spanish dentist for a few weeks.
That was great.
Also, for very little money. We didn't want him to know that we had a car because we didn't think that he had a car.
or he had a car, but he had one of those cheesy tin can Seats.
Yeah. I thought, you know, Lynn talked about how late dinner was served. This dentist, you know, they had it, at that time, I understand they don't do this anymore, but in Spain, you had a siesta. All of the shops, everything closed from 1 to 4 p.m. The dentist, his practice was from 7 to 11 in the morning and 7 to 11 in the evening. That was when people were available to go to the dentist, I guess.
Yeah, I forget a little bit how we advertised and got the dentist as a paying customer, but one of the things that memorable thing is he loved looking at our mouth because we had so much dental work done. And he was just amazed at these beautiful fillings that we had. And he said, "Oh no, over here people come in and they go, pull it."
Yeah.
Yeah, we were out and about in our car. I remember on a couple of different occasions when we thought we saw him in his little tin can Seat, and so we'd go dashing down another street, and I'd duck and hide because we just thought it would embarrass him to see us in this brand new, nice German car, and having him, give us the pittance to teach him some English. But it was cool. Yeah, the babysitting. I went with that family to Toledo once. And I don't think you ever got to go to Toledo.
I did. We took a couple of the guys from who we knew from the Pension Jose Garcia. And they went to Toledo with us, and that was really worthwhile. There's a wonderful church there, and El Greco's house, and it's an ancient town. There's a 2nd century A.D. bridge across a little stream there, a stone bridge. A very, very picturesque place. But anyway, when we left Madrid, we went to Lisbon, and we arrived in a place called Merida, and it was January 6th, which is a big day for Catholics, the Ascension. Epiphany, sorry. And there was a big celebration we just happened on this in the evening, and there was a procession of the three kings with their servants, all dressed up, and then anyway, there was a big procession and with the icons carried through the town. And then we took off from there going to Lisbon, and we crossed into, it was at night when we crossed into Portugal. And I remember in the headlights of the car, I'd see these trees in this forest. And I thought I recognized what it was, and we stopped and had a look, and they were cork trees. First time I'd ever seen a cork tree, so that was pretty exciting. And we arrived in Lisbon late at night, like 1 or 2 in the morning. And we went to a hotel, and they wouldn't rent us a room. They didn't believe that we were brothers and sisters. So even though our passports...
And we had no luggage, because our luggage was down in the car. So they were like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was funny because, very often people would disbelieve that we were siblings. And then other times people would go, oh, yeah, you look alike, But... that always caught us by surprise when especially that night, they wouldn't let us check into the hotel. I don't know. We did find some place to stay ultimately.
Yeah, we found a nice, inexpensive hotel where they served us coffee in the morning, I think. And Lisbon's a beautiful city. The Castle of St. George up on the hill, and Alfama, the old district, and it's a lovely harbor on the Tagus, and anyway, from there...
Just a minute. One of my memories there was that morning, early in the morning, there was a guy going along with some kind of little flute, and I think he was a knife sharpener or something. But, here's this... It was just so enchanting, this guy going along playing his little flute. Yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful city. Really. One thing that I remember being flummoxed by was we'd picked up some Spanish, and I had quite a bit of French, and Portuguese was just like playing a record backwards. It didn't seem to have any relationship to the other Romance languages.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, anyway, then from Lisbon, we went south back into Spain and south, and on our way to Gibraltar. And we spent a night in the car along that trip too. But anyway, we were driving along the southern southern Spanish coast, and we didn't really want to go to Cadiz for some reason, but Cadiz, I didn't know that, but actually Cadiz I believe is an island. Well, anyway, we got lost, and there was this very long bridge that we went back and forth about 3 times before we actually
Figured out.
And then we ended up sleeping in the car that night. Gibraltar was a revelation because suddenly it's British. You know, you cross, and there was a lot of tension there between the Spanish and the British, and we heard that they were only letting like 1 car an hour in or something like that. So we got there early in the morning, and we didn't have very much of a wait. But Gibraltar was like this little time capsule. You know, the British had had this place for a couple hundred years, and everything was, all the shops were British, and there is a kind of Gibraltarian people who are half Spanish, half English, who've intermarried over the years with British personnel there. And then from there we took a boat, and from Algeciras, we went to Algeciras, which is in Spain, and took a ferry boat and just spent an afternoon in Tangiers.
I think we should stop for a second and make sure that our sound is recording okay.
Okay.